When you think about working in space, you probably just think of astronauts. But did you know that those who work in the ground station are just as important as the astronauts? Come and join me as we find out more about the importance of the ground station. I'm your host, Francesca Palabrica, and this is Circuit Rikit. Hello, so I'm here today with Engineer Candelaria from Stamina for Space program. So Engineer, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you also for inviting me here.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, so I'm Candelaria and I am a science research specialist at the Stamina for Space program Step Up project. And my main task is more on the ground station operations, particularly the amateur radio ground station.
Can you tell us a little bit about what being part of the ground station entails?
Well, as a ground station operator, so my main task is the operations of the amateur radio ground station. That includes the tracking of satellites like our Diwata-2 microsatellites and our Maya Cube satellites. Aside from that, I also conduct the maintenance of our ground station to ensure that it is working properly.
So you've mentioned the amateur radio station multiple times now. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and why you chose that kind of unit?
Amateur radio is actually a hobby wherein these enthusiasts use this radio equipment and the radio frequency to communicate with other amateur radio operators. Diwata-2 actually, it has an amateur radio unit or ARU that acts as a voice repeater in space. So if you have a radio or a handheld radio transceiver, you can use that to communicate with other amateur radio operators.
What's the use of this ARU? How does this ARU on the Diwata help the average Filipino?
For the amateur radio unit, since it acts as a voice repeater in space, it can be used especially during times of disasters and emergencies. Since our country is prone to facing these typhoons, so madalas dinadaanan tayo ng bagyo, one of the inspiration for the scientists is to put an amateur radio unit sa payload ni Diwata-2. And if you would recall, during Typhoon Yolanda, most of the vital infrastructure there were damaged. And hindi natin siya mapakinabangan since down nga sila, even our mobile phones. So communication is vital during those events. And one of the first communication that came out of Tacloban City during that time is through the amateur radio. So that's why the researchers of Diwata-2 microsatellite included an ARU or amateur radio unit sa kanyang payload.
So this is all very interesting, and I think I want to know more about how the ARU works. And I think our viewers would love to see an ARU in action. Do you think you can show us a little bit?
Yes, we can. So hello and welcome to our amateur radio ground station. So this amateur radio ground station, we call this P.U.G.A.D. So P.U.G.A.D is an acronym for Philippine University's Ground Archiving and Data Reception. Hindi lang ito yung ground station na meron tayo. So we have 3 other ground stations and it is strategically located throughout the Philippines. We have 2 in Luzon, including ito yung nasa UP-EEEI. And then we have 1 in Visayas and 1 in Mindanao. So for Luzon, we have the Holy Angel University. Sa Visayas naman, yung University of San Carlos. Sa Cebu pala located yon. And then sa Mindanao, we have the Mindanao State University, Iligan Institute of Technology. We have a network of this amateur radio ground station. As you can see, meron tayo ditong mga radio transceivers. So these are called mga base radio. Ginagamit natin siya for the ground station operations natin. So this operates in the amateur radio frequency band. So we have the VHF band and the UHF band. Aside from that, we also have here yung ating antenna rotator controller. So this is the one responsible sa pag-track ng ating mga satellites pag nagpapass sila over our horizon. And then last is we have yung ating computer. So we use here yung mga software para i-process yung mga signals na nare-receive natin from the satellites. Meron din tayong antenna. So although hindi nyo siya nakikita dito since it is located outside, nasa roof deck siya ng building natin. These are the antennas that we used for satellite tracking. Nakamount siya dito sa antenna tower natin and it is connected sa antenna rotator, which is the one responsible for tracking of the satellites during the pass of the satellite. Okay, so right now we are tracking here the Maya 3 Cube satellite. So if you can see on this screen, we have this white circle here. So this is what we call the satellite's footprint. So if you are inside that area, you can receive signals from the satellite. So currently, it is near to pass over our horizon here in the Philippines. So it's not just that visible, but Philippines is right here. We're just waiting for it to pass over the Philippine horizon so that we can receive the signal from the Maya Cube satellite. Now, here on the bottom part of the screen, so we have here our CW skimmer software. So as you can see, we are receiving signals right now, and these are Morse code beacon. These are the beacons that we receive from the Maya Cube satellite, and this Morse code beacon contains information about the health status of the satellite. As ground station operator, so what we do is we decode those Morse code and then we use a software. So this software is the CW beacon decoder. So what we do is after decoding the Morse code, so we input it here in the CW telemetry decoder software, and then we let the software analyze those Morse code, and then from there we will get the information that we need from the Maya Cube satellite. Okay, so what you saw a while ago was the tracking of the Maya 3 Cube satellite. So now I will be showing you how we operate the Diwata 2 FM voice repeater. So currently, we are using our base radio to communicate with the Diwata 2 FM voice repeater. But aside from that, we can also use our handheld radios. So such as these radios. So you can use these also to communicate with other amateur operators using this radio transceiver. But right now, we will be using the base radio. For operating the Diwata 2 FM voice repeater, usually the ham operators have a procedure for doing that. We first listen to the frequency and make sure that no one is using it. Then if it is free, we can now make the call. So what we say is CQ. CQ means general call. And then we mention our call sign. So our call sign is the one that is assigned to amateur radio operator as their identification for them to use during the communication. So we say CQ PO101, then my call sign, which is 4I1EDN. So if you observe, I used phonetics since for amateur radio operators, we are using the radio frequency, which is quite noisy. That's why we use phonetics for them to hear our call sign in a clear way. After that, we wait for other amateur operators to respond. We have here a video of the actual conversation of amateur operators using Diwata 2's FM voice repeater.
CQ Bravo Golf 7 SV Whiskey Foxtrot, Bravo Golf 7 SV Whiskey Foxtrot, CQ satellite.
Bravo 7 X-ray Whiskey Foxtrot, this is 4 Eagle 1.
India 1 Delta India November, Kesha.
Bravo 7 X-ray Whiskey Foxtrot, this is 4 India 1 Echo Delta November. You are 5x9. Is that USL, over?
Yes, sir. 4 India 1 Echo Delta November. You are also 5x9. Thank you very much.
Okay, so if you've heard during the conversation, you have heard the 5x9. So that 5x9 is what we call the RS report, or the radio signal strength report. So usually, if we can hear the other operator clearly, so we give them a 5x9 RS report. So R stands for readability and S stands for the strength. Usually after the conversation of amateur radio operators, they send out QSL cards such as the one you can see here. So QSL card is an acknowledgement that you two have communicated with each other through the PO101 satellite. So in this example kasi, nakapag-communicate kami using the AO91 satellite. So it's another FM voice repeater satellite. So ayun. Okay, so the next example here of the application of the amateur radio is that we can receive weather satellite images from the NOAA weather satellites. So in this case, this is the NOAA 19 weather satellite. So what it does is it transmits weather satellite images. So this is an APT image. So APT stands for automatic picture transmission. So if you can see, it scans the area line by line. So that's what we are receiving here. And from that image, as it is being processed, you can already see here the cloud formation as well as the map of the Philippines.
Thank you so much for showing us how the ARU works. Now, may I ask, what's the most challenging part of your job?
For the most challenging part, so as a ground station operator, so I think that would be the first phase wherein you will be setting up your ground station. Since we have radio equipments which are quite heavy, so it's physically challenging, as well as we have to assemble our antennas. So those antennas are quite big, taller than me, but I'm lucky because we have a team that helps with the setup of the ground station.
So what would you say is the most rewarding part of your job?
For the most rewarding, that would be knowing that your ground system is working. And also, I would just like to share during the release of the CubeSat satellites, such as the one you see here. So this is a CubeSat satellite. It's an actual size of the CubeSat satellite. So during the release of the CubeSat satellite at the ISS or International Space Station, so the ground station is the first one who will receive the beacon of that CubeSat satellite. Seeing the researchers, seeing them that the ground station is able to receive the beacon of the CubeSat satellite and seeing their happy faces. So I think that's one of the most rewarding part as a ground station operator, since you know that the CubeSat satellite that they worked hard for is working in space.
So this is all very interesting, and may I just ask, how did you end up working as a ground staff? Did you always plan to be working as ground staff?
Actually, when I was in college, we have an amateur radio club. I joined that club not knowing that I will be able to apply what I've learned in that radio club here in my current job today.
What started your interest in radios? Because you mentioned you were in an amateur radio club. So how did this interest blossom?
Well, when I was a kid, we have one of those old radio transceivers, and I would like to play with that, the walkie-talkie toys. So I think that's one of the things that sparked my interest in radio communications. That's why I also took the electronics engineering course.
Oh, that's very interesting. So thank you so much for taking the time to show us and to share with us all your knowledge. Thank you all so much for watching. Once again, this is Francesca Palabrica.
And I'm Candelaria.
And this is Circuit Rikit.